It's the biggest draft day story in NFL history, and it sucked. This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Buffs crossover.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. That is Kevin Borba, a little crossover action. He hosts Locked On Buffs. Thanks for making our shows your first listen every single day. We will start Shedeur Sanders falling to the 5th round. It's the biggest story in draft day history, biggest story in draft weekend history, and we have to hit on it. It affects the Big 12 in a very negative way. We'll get to why it happened. Then the Big 12 actually had a good weekend. The most draft picks since 2005. 31 guys off the board. Ton of wide receivers as well. Travis Hunter leading the pack. Then BYU basketball. Richie Saunders is back. Colorado basketball, kind of the opposite. Let's go ebb and flow. Who has won? Who has lost? The transfer portal. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Kevin, Saturday, I am in Clemson Memorial Football Stadium as the Savannah Bananas and Party Animals played a game on ESPN. It's the biggest day in Bananas history. I walk to the crest of the stadium. We overlook a sea of thousands of people at 3 p.m. who are waiting to get in. And the vice president of the company looks over to me and says, "Crazy, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I can't believe it." And he goes, "Shedeur, like, how does he drop this far?" That was the focus of the country. There's never anytime someone would say, "Has he gone yet? Has he gone yet?" It was the murmur around all of social media and in person, and you get chills. Like, we've never been talking draft on day 3, and then the number 5 prospect on Mel Kiper's list drops to the 5th round. From the prank call to him not going in the top 20 where FanDuel had him slated. Tell me what happened and why.
Yeah, it was, I don't want to say traumatic because obviously it didn't happen to me, but it was one of those things where I feel like we'll remember this for years to come. I think it was kind of a rarity, right? You look at drafts past where it's like Will Levis fell out of the 1st round but went early in the 2nd. Lamar Jackson.
First pick of the 2nd round, right?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson was the 32nd pick in the 1st round. Like, it was like, okay, those guys had traumatic falls and they still ended up going in or around the 1st round, where Shedeur, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, Mel Kiper is a Shedeur homer. There was a point in time where he was the favorite to go number 1 overall.
Yeah. Literally
the first pick in the draft before Cam Ward. And then after that, I was like, okay, Cam Ward's kind of surpassed him and he'll still be a top 10 pick, right? That was the consensus throughout. And then things started to shift, right? And I'll sort of walk you through what I was told, because I reached out to a lot of people that are working in or around the NFL draft or the NFL in general. And I was like, tell me what happened. Like, literally explain this to me like I'm 5. And so the common consensus that I got was Shedeur had a very unorthodox pre-draft process. And there's two reasons. We'll start with the pre-draft process. For one, he went to the East-West Shrine Bowl, which in and of itself was kind of a weird move because usually the top players go to the Reese's Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
And he didn't participate in anything at the Shrine Bowl. He just kind of showed up, brought some buzz to the game, and then just left. Then he didn't participate in anything at the NFL Scouting Combine, which isn't it's not normal, or not, it is normal for top prospects to not participate, because it's like the worst thing that could happen is it hurts their draft stock more than it helps. And so he didn't participate there, didn't participate in the Big 12 Pro Day, and then his Pro Day at Colorado was kind of viewed as average. But the thing that sort of stood out the most to me was his interview process. What I was told was he did not nail it, right? There was moments where he sort of just, and this was the rumors throughout the process, was like he didn't give it his all during certain interviews. Jonathan Jones from CBS Sports went as far as to say he sandbagged a few interviews, and that was sort of his way of like trying to get his way to a certain team. And so I think there was a lot of pre-draft issues in that sense, not issues, but like pre-draft shenanigans, if you will, or pre-draft, like not normal happenings that sort of impacted him. And then another factor is, I think Deion Sanders and the whole thing of like, hey, we're going to control where he goes. I think that rubbed a lot of teams the wrong way. And then once he fell to the 1st round, that changes the narrative around him, because now teams are no longer, and the 2nd round, honestly, once you fall to the 3rd round and beyond, teams are drafting you as a backup or a reserve. And so at that point, teams are like, do we really want this guy as our backup, when he's going to be more famous than our starter. Like they drafted Dylan Gabriel, the Browns did. They drafted him 2 rounds before him, right? And Shedeur is a better quarterback than Dylan Gabriel. There's no doubt in my mind, but there was just so many things that happened pre-draft that culminated into this. And I think whether people are going to say it or not, I think the NFL wanted to teach the Sanders family a lesson. Like, hey, you don't get to do this to us and then get things to go your way. Whether it's fair or not, I don't know, but that's what it came off as to me, and that's what people told me.
Yeah, but why didn't the Manning family get that treatment? Why didn't Johnny Manziel get that treatment? Why didn't Baker get that?
It's a great question, honestly, because
there have been players and families even who have had similar stances on the draft.
Yeah, and I think the Manning family is the best example, right? Because it was the closest thing. I would say the one thing that was different, a couple things actually. Eli Manning made it specific he didn't want to play for the Chargers. It was never revealed what team Shedeur didn't want to play for or what teams his dad didn't want him to play for. So I think maybe that was a factor. Like maybe if they just came out and said, hey, we don't want to play for the Kansas City Chiefs, right? They have Patrick Mahomes. Like this is obviously an example, but we don't want to play for them. Maybe that changes it, right? I also think there was so much negative talk around this draft class, quarterback-wise, where people were like, this draft class is the worst quarterback class since the Malik Willis one. I think there was enough people willing to pass on him just because they thought this class was weak. I do think that the Manning thing was a little bit different because Eli was the consensus top guy, where Shedeur, I think the pre-draft stuff really impacted his standing with NFL teams.
No doubt. It culminated in him going to the Browns.
Yeah.
Who had already taken a quarterback. And Deion has been, was 2018 his tweet that, no quarterback should play for the Browns. We're 8 years removed from that. It's a very different organization today. Still not a winning organization, but different. They don't have a surefire starting quarterback. Deshaun Watson has been not just in hot water, but also kind of bad at the quarterback thing. So from Deshaun Watson to Dylan Gabriel to Joe Flacco, I think is on roster. Kenny Pickett is on roster. Shedeur has an opportunity, and any NFL team like the Browns that needs to make money, needs jersey sales, needs a storyline, needs cameras in their camp. What else do the Browns have going for them? Pretty much nothing. Now they will have a ton of media coverage. Whatever team took him would have a ton of media coverage. Had he gone to a Jacksonville, would have been fascinating. Again, jersey sales. This is revamping the economy of a town because you have Deion Sanders' son. He goes to Cleveland. What is there a bright side to him being a Cleveland Brown? Because I don't think I would ever want to be, if I was in the NFL, Cleveland Brown.
Yeah, I think there is a bright side, right? We mentioned the hodgepodge of quarterbacks that they have. I think realistically, Shedeur is probably better than Dylan Gabriel. We know what Kenny Pickett is.
Yeah.
Shout out to Kenny Two Gloves. He's not good. Joe Flacco is 55 years old. And Dylan Gabriel, he's better than Dylan Gabriel, right? So as I said already, I think he has a legitimate chance to start. I think this was a little bit of a humbling ritual for him. Like, honestly, I think that's sort of been the notion going around, but he will have a chance to start for the Browns. Now, I think that it's going to be a lot different than how we imagined because he's going in as QB 4 or 5, whereas a month ago we were like, he's going to get drafted by the Browns at 2 or 3, wherever they had, and he's going to start right away. But Shedeur is the biggest name in Cleveland right now. If you look at, I'll pull my phone up. That's the NFL's Instagram if you're not watching. And the first 2 pictures were Shedeur Sanders, right?
Yeah.
They love Shedeur Sanders. They love the brand. And I think he's just going to have to prove, and I think this may help him, honestly, in the NFL, prove that he can win that job. And I think people respect him more for it, right? Because this is his first time playing football for someone not named Deion Sanders. And so I think there's a little bit of an element where he could prove a lot of people wrong. And I think he's talented enough. I never wavered. I thought he was a first-round talent throughout the entire process. And so to see him fall beyond I was like, I tell my fiance, it's like the second round rolls around. I'm like, okay, like, don't worry. We could go to dinner tonight because Shedeur is going to get drafted. And like my podcast will be done in like the first 5 picks, right? No, right? Shedeur goes through all these rounds undrafted. I'm like, hey, we got to cancel dinner plans. Like, this is crazy. And I think there was a message being sent to him, but Drake, you know this as well as anyone. When a team like the Browns drafts 2 quarterbacks and they have Joe Flacco, they have Kenny Pickett, and they have Deshaun Watson, who's never going to play for them again, but he's still on the roster technically, there's opportunity there, is there not, right? Dysfunction leads to someone succeeding. And do you think Shedeur could succeed? I mean, what was Colorado before he got there?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is not the perfect situation by any means, but at least it's a situation where there's not a Patrick Mahomes. There's not a CJ Stroud. There's not even a Trevor Lawrence, who you know has the keys moving forward in the organization. Now it is Shedeur Sanders. At least he has an opportunity. It's the door being open for him to be a starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns next season. Coming up, the Big 12 overall had a very good, like historically good draft. This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Buffs crossover. Hey, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go to make money. And FanDuel had a ton of great draft props. And just because the draft is over doesn't mean FanDuel is done with the NBA playoffs right now. You can make $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy. 3-pointers, steals, assists. After the game tips off, you can combine live props for a live same-game parlay and get a chance to win big. Do not miss out. Head to FanDuel.com. Claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That is at FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com and do it today. Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs. There's a reason you're still here. The Big 12 had its most impressive draft of all time, set multiple records, 31 total players going. That's the most since 2005 when the league garnered 32 total picks. And on top of that, the wide receivers that went off the board. If you want to count Travis Hunter going 2nd overall, Ted McMillan going 8th overall. That was a huge part of this class. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll getting to stay together. I was impressed with what the Big 12 put together over the course of these 3 days, even into the late rounds. Having 7 6-round selections, 4, 5 in the 5th and 7th rounds as well. This was good for the Big 12. I think Travis Hunter, again, is kind of at the forefront of that.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 showed that they have a lot of talent, which is obviously not a profound take by saying this, but realistically, when people talk about the NFL and even college football these days, the NFL draft that is, they go, this is the SEC sort of display. This is the Big Ten's display of like how good they are. And the Big 12 went out and put on a statement, put on a show, right? Colorado had the most receivers taken if you count Travis. They had 3.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned the Iowa State guys. That's huge. Both of those guys were drafted to a very good team. They'll have a chance to make a name for themselves at the NFL level. I think if you're a Big 12 supporter or Brett Yormark, you look at this draft and you sort of are like, hey, this is a selling point for our conference, right? Because Drake, you cover this as much as anyone. Conference realignment is happening. Media rights deals are always in the works, right? Brett Yormark could be like, hey, look, we are only getting better as the seasons go on, as the years go on, and our additions to the conference are only strengthening us. So why not like give the Big 12 some respect?
Of course, the Big 12 deserves a whole lot of respect. And even with the Travis Hunter saga falling on the Big 12 conference, I mean, it's something that I think superseded what the Big 12 was. No one was mentioning his league in these conversations. No one was saying, oh, well, the Big 12's weak, so that's why he dropped. And you especially didn't hear that when Travis Hunter went 2nd overall. That being kind of the crown jewel of what the league got, having Travis Hunter win the Heisman Trophy, having him be drafted 2nd overall, having him walk into the NFL as someone who's an everyday starter for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Did you feel like the Big 12 was mentioned enough? We always say when the guy goes 3rd overall, 4th overall, oh, he's a D tackle in the SEC. Oh, he's a quarterback or a corner in the SEC. No one said Travis Hunter is a Big 12 product, but he won the Heisman Trophy because of what he did in and out of conference, and that conference was the Big 12.
Yeah, I don't think the Big 12 got enough respect at all, honestly. I think every year when the SEC does something where it's like, oh, the SEC breaks the record for X amount of picks, or even our sponsors over at Prize Picks, right? One of the props was over under 3.5 SEC players taken in the top 10, right? Everything is geared towards the SEC, but it's like the Big 12, like you said, produced the number 2 overall pick, granted, or not even granted, in a way that it's historic. Like, not only is this historic for the Big 12, but Travis Hunter was the first player ever to be announced as a wide receiver and a corner, right? That has never happened. He had 2 freaking cue cards, Drake. One of them said receiver, one of them said corner, and that deserves way more attention, right? They had a bunch of talented guys drafted throughout, and it's like, okay, even if the SEC, which granted the SEC has a lot of talented guys, I'm not trying to take it away from them and make it seem like they're not a good conference, but give every conference some respect if it's warranted, right? I'm all for being like, hey, the SEC had 1,000 players drafted if they had 1,000 players drafted. But the Big 12 has a historic draft class, and the only person to talk to me about it is the guy who covers them on the daily. I need more coverage from the worldwide leader.
Yeah, no doubt. Running backs too, though. This was the wide receiver room. We didn't get enough credit. Travis Hunter, we didn't get enough credit. Running backs, we didn't get enough credit. We broke Big 12 records, the amount of wide receivers taken, the amount of running backs taken as well. 8 wideouts, 7 guys that tote the rock. That led by R.J. Harvey, who was the first from the conference off the board. Not Cam Scadaboo, which a lot of people found interesting. Scadaboo headed out to New York. DJ Giddens also heard his name called. Ollie Gordon, Devin Neal, Taj Brooks, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. This is a running back deep league. We learned that on draft day. And maybe the wildest knot of this is that Taj Brooks wasn't one of the top 3 or 4 out of the Big 12 to go, and that Cam Scadaboo wasn't number 1 to go. I just think that shows the depth and success this league has, specifically at that position as well.
Yeah, and I think they put up a graphic during the draft where it was like a lot of, I don't remember the number, but all pros are like 4th through 7th round. Like that's like where they find a lot of these guys, right? And so when people talked about this draft class, and I don't think, again, the Big 12 didn't get enough credit, they go, this running back class is so deep, right? If you don't get Ashton Genty or Marion Hampton, you could take one in the 5th round, and there's going to be a chance that he's going to be a superstar. Well, all of these guys that have potential superstar power are coming out of the Big 12. Like Cam Scadaboo legitimately was one of the biggest names in college football, and he could revive or help revive a Giants offense who is still in pain from losing Saquon Barkley, right? RJ Harvey, he is a guy that didn't start off as a running back, right? I believe he was recruited as a quarterback, comes in at UCF, and some people think he's the best running back in the class. Like some people think he is the most talented. And so I think 5 years from now, we're going to be looking back and going, wow, a lot of these Big 12 running backs that did not go in the 1st or 2nd round were really good. And I think it's going to be another example of like, hey, maybe this Big 12 conference isn't so bad.
It was the depth of player to the prime example for me, and I'm going to go back to that wide receiver position. Jalen Knoll was taken 79th overall by the Texans, and I think it was Mel Kiper brought it up immediately. He's like, hey, here's how good Jalen Knoll is. The teams behind the Texans just traded out. They were like, well, we missed out on the guy that we were sitting here waiting on, and the fact that he's gone, we're going to trade out. We're going to drop lower. We need more time to figure out where we're going to go next. So the Big 12 conference as a whole didn't get the love it deserved, but it was also on the 4 letters, the whole ES and PN thing. They're a big.
One player got a lot of love, right? I think the whole draft was just the Shedeur Sanders special for Mel Kiper and his blow up. Drake, I want to get your opinions on that. Was that good or bad?
Thought the blow up was valid. The guys were like, hey, if I was doing something for 40 years, if I had predicted the stock market for 40 years and been pretty good, like the number one guy, the number one name in stock market predicting for 40 years, and said, hey, everybody, invest in this stock. It's top 5 in my stocks of the year for 2025. And then it falls to bits. It goes from $100 per share to $1 per share. I'm mad. Yeah. I'm mad at the malpractice on someone's part here. Like, what is happening? So I understand why he was it the time or the place? Probably. When else is the time or the place? This is the draft is actually happening.
I think that may have taken away from the Big 12 in a way, though. If like the Big 12 as a whole, because if you look at how people were talking about Mel and Shedeur, it was like, oh my gosh, we're still talking about this. Not like, oh my gosh, look at this run of receivers. Like, look at Iowa State had 2 elite receivers go to the same team, or all these running backs. DJ Giddens, Ollie Gordon was like the front runner for the Heisman at one point, and like not a peep, right? I think if you ask 9 out of 10 people who are just average fans, they'd be like, oh, I don't know where he went, right? Because like we spent so much time focusing on one thing, so maybe that took away from the Big 12, right? Maybe we just focused on one thing in particular and didn't allow the rest of the conference to get its shine.
Yeah, I would say in response to that, though, it also took a lot of attention away from the SEC. It took attention away from everything. Mel Kiper did.
That was insane, right? That was like
it was the story. It's the biggest story in draft history, and we'll be talking about it, I'm sure, for genuinely years to come. Coming up, BYU basketball is reloaded. Colorado basketball doesn't have a team. Baylor has got a couple of guys. What's happening in Big 12 basketball? I just need a break from football for a second. On Locked On Big 12 with the Buffs crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where I go to get tickets to every single event I want to attend, and they're so cheap. And with the NBA playoffs going right now, there's nothing like that atmosphere. It's an electric environment. I went to Oklahoma City last year, saw them play Dallas in a knockdown, drag-out game thanks to Game Time, where last-minute deals can save you up to 60%, especially as most of the time prices go down as tip-off gets closer. Last-minute deals save you those 60%, and the all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. Use code LOCKEDONCollege and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time for $20 off your first purchase. Code LOCKEDONCollege. Again, terms apply. Download the Game Time app. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, and that is guaranteed with Game Time. Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs. I want to get into some Big 12 basketball here. From BYU, who has built a super roster next season, to Colorado, who doesn't really have a roster for next season right now. They're struggling to put that together still. To a Baylor who's reloaded, and a couple of these schools who have gone underrated, overlooked, and are trying to piece things together. Where I will start, the biggest news of the weekend in Big 12 basketball, Richie Saunders is headed back to BYU for year 4. His dad said that it was with a lot of due diligence, so the conversation was, I'm sure, there of, hey, could we pick up an NBA contract? What does it look like? I don't know if he would have gone to the portal, but what does it look like his future at BYU? If he stays at BYU, he says yes. Rob Wright, insanely talented point guard out of the portal going to BYU. H. DeBonsa, number 1 player in the country. Keba Keita, who is a Utah transfer that was an integral part of their run in March Madness last year. And now, Borba, they have the number 2 basketball class in the country. 2025 looking up for the BYU Cougars. But let's start with Colorado. Because when I reached out to you, I was like, I'm just going to rub it in. I don't, what is left of a team that was in March Madness, less than 2 years ago. And now it's like this basketball program is just really taking a step back to maybe it is the name Deion Sanders and how big football has become there. It just feels like basketball at Colorado is not where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think the most telltale sign was Colorado makes it to the NCAA tournament last year, or 2 years ago now. And they win a game against Florida. Super exciting, right? They advance to the second round. Everyone's like, oh, yes. And then all of a sudden you lose you lose Tristan Da Silva to the NBA. KJ Simpson goes to the NBA. And then you lose a handful of other guys to the transfer portal. It's like, oh, that's odd. Usually when you make a run, you sort of build something, right?
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. And so this past year, I think Yakimovsky was their best player. And I think if Andrei Yakimovsky is your best player, you're SOL, because he's probably a really good 6 man on most teams. And so this Colorado team, I'm looking at their roster right now, if you want to call it that. They have 1 transfer coming in, Barrington Hargreaves from UC Riverside. He's really good scorer, good point guard. And then they have 5 guys in their class, their recruiting class. So it's going to be a very young team. They have a lot of work to do in the portal, and the portal costs money. CBS put out a report the other day where it was like the top teams are spending $10 million on a roster. And I could promise you Colorado is nowhere near that. So the teams that are spending a lot of money are finding a lot of success. Plus BYU and their tater tot money, it runs deep, right?
Yes, it does. BYU has flexed the idea that they have money now, and that it's not a bad thing, and it's not. I mean, you can do it. They're doing everything legally, and they say, hey, we have this capital from successful business people around the program. Deion Sanders, a very successful business person who's brought capital to the Colorado football program. I don't think Deion's going out of his way to hand off money to the basketball program. Doesn't have to. They're not the revenue sport in town anywhere, but at BYU and at any university in basketball, you can instant impact so much more than you can in football. I'm a multimillionaire. I have $10 million that I can give to a certain program across the country. My $10 million in NIL to football may go to 4 players. Yeah. In basketball, I can buy the entire team, or I can buy 4 of the most top-end players in the country, first-round draft picks, and that is saying something for how you win and the product you get to see. Whereas in football, if I've got 4 really good dudes, but past that, I'm kind of piecing it together, it gets a lot tougher to win. So because of that, BYU is seeing this meteoric rise, and even Baylor has put a lot in investment into NIL, and Texas Tech has done the same. Houston is a massive winner of the transfer portal. I think at Cincinnati as well, Heartland College Sports, named them. It's an article from Matthew Postins, named them their team of the week in the transfer portal. Jalen Celestine was a big bring in. Kirk Creesa coming over there as well. That's going to help a Cincinnati team that needs to win next year. A Baylor team that has added a ton to the portal because they had 0 guys. That was a massive story this offseason. They just ran out of players. They all left for whatever reason, whether it be NBA or the portal. But again, BYU, I'll go back to them where I started. They are preseason number 1 in the Big 12 next season, have to be, with the additions that they've made. And I think across the board in their athletic department, they're looking really, really solid. Do you think, I would say there's like a UCF need to win now. Cincinnati need to win now. There are schools in the Big 12 in basketball need to win immediately for their coach to stay alive. Keep their jobs. We're not going to kill them, for them to stay alive at their universities.
Off with their heads.
Borba, at Colorado, is there a win now mentality in basketball, or can you kind of punt this thing?
I feel you kind of have to punt it, really. And I think it's win now in the sense of like, hey, we need to see some progress. Like Tad Boyle is a really good coach. I would say he's probably one of the more accomplished coaches in program history, but I don't know how many seasons you could string together of mediocrity. But at the same time, and we've seen this around the league, right? Utah didn't have a deep bag of NIL when they had Craig Smith, right? But then he gets fired, and now all of a sudden Utah's pockets, they got a little deeper because people are like, okay, I'm willing to invest in this. So maybe Tad Boyle's time is running out and people aren't as willing to throw money at a program that's drowning. Whereas like BYU, there's so much excitement. They get AJ DeBansta, they get everyone. It feels like they got everyone they wanted. And why wouldn't people be excited about it, right? There's a lot of investment because there's a lot of positivity and news trending upward. Whereas Colorado, it's like, hey, we went to the tournament, we won a game, and we lost half our roster. Cool. Like, why would that excite people? So I think they need to win. But I also feel like maybe if Tad Boyle gets shipped out, maybe that increases the NIL budget.
One team, and I know you're not the biggest basketball guy in the world, but you cover it. And look, if you are a Colorado beat reporter, as you are, it's tough to have basketball at A1. If you're a Kansas beat reporter, though, you certainly have basketball at the forefront of what you're thinking about. How about that team name? Usually, whether you're a casual or a hardcore fan, you're going to hear something about Kansas in the offseason. Flory Badunga was maybe the biggest storyline they've had, but I feel like Kansas has really flown under the radar, which is something we never say about Kansas basketball.
Yeah, I think we're sort of witnessing, I don't want to say the death of a blue blood, because that seems like really extreme, but the lore, the vibes around Kansas are not feeling the same as they once were, right? You look at Duke, you look at North Carolina, all these St. John's, who's like resurrected from the dead. All these programs are coming back and they're finding success. Whereas Kansas, it feels like the Bill Self experience is feeling John Calipari-ish, where it's like the fans are getting upset with him because it's not what it once was. And who knows if like how long he wants to stay there and be criticized for not sort of living up to these standards that he kind of put on himself in a way because he was so successful. Would you agree with that, the John Calipari thing?
I don't know yet. It's kind of like that Clemson thing we had a couple years ago where everybody's like, oh, Dabo lost his touch, and then they went to the college football playoff this year. Now, did they deserve a college football playoff spot? That's semantics, but I think that we're one Bill Self Elite Eight Final Four away from saying, oh, it was just a couple of years where he didn't meet the standard that Kansas, sets. But they were number 1 to start the season last year and didn't, they didn't even win a game in March Madness. So I think you consider that as well.
I'll say this, though. They have a lot riding on Darren Peterson, who's the guy that surpassed Advanta as the number 1 recruit in the country. And anytime you're like really riding your hopes on a true freshman, it's tough, right? Duke, same thing. Cooper Flagg, Con Knippel, Baylor, right? Yeah. They had all these true freshman guys where it's like, okay, we got our guy. This is our year. And it doesn't happen. It's like, okay, now what? Right? Because what happens if Kansas, like Drake, let me give you a scenario. They finish 5th in the Big 12 next year. And they make it to the Big 12 or the NCAA tournament, win 1 game, get bounced in the second. What are the vibes in Lawrence?
They're going to start asking for Bill Self to be fired. Some of them already are, and that's stupid. Really, really stupid. He's earned, a lifetime contract, but that's the way that it's the same reason Iowa State fans were asking for Matt Campbell to be fired, a year and a half ago. It's just the way it goes in college sports. And the way that it goes on Locked On Big 12 is we have entertaining, fun shows, and we have fun crossovers too. Kevin, where can more folks find your work?
Yeah, find me over at Locked On Buffs. We're always talking all things Colorado. We'll be doing a deep dive into the Shedeur Sanders collapse, if you will, and the whole ordeal that went on throughout the draft process. And we'll be doing some fun crossovers as well, because there's a lot of things happening.
So many things happening. Happy April, everybody. This has been, it always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. A crossover with Buffs and Dose Grande.